only that it will be his, and it will be built on truth rather than the comfortable fiction he had mistaken for love. 6 months after the email, Marcus received another message, this time from a lawyer he did not know, a woman named Sandra Chen, practicing out of Augusta. She represented 3 of the former Clearwater clients in unrelated matters and wanted to speak with him off the record. Marcus almost deleted it, had no interest in relitigating old wounds, but something in the phrasing made him call her back. They met at a diner halfway between Portland and Augusta, one of those chrome-sided railroad car places that serve breakfast all day, and Sandra slid into the booth across from him with a messenger bag stuffed with file folders and a directness Marcus appreciated. "I am not here to defend what your ex-wife did," she said before he could even order coffee. "But I need you to understand something about the women she worked with, or at least the ones I represent now." Marcus listened. Sandra laid out 3 cases. The first was a woman named Pauline, married for 19 years to a man who controlled every dollar, required her to submit receipts for groceries, checked her car odometer to verify trips. Clearwater had helped her slowly redirect her part-time bookkeeping income into a separate account over 18 months, enough to eventually rent an apartment and file for divorce from a safe location. The second was Carmen, whose husband had emptied their joint savings to pay gambling debts twice, left her scrambling to cover their mortgage while he promised to quit and never did. Clearwater had advised her on protecting her teacher pension and opening a credit card he did not know about. The third was younger, a woman named Beth, whose husband had been arrested for domestic assault but made bail, and who needed resources to disappear before trial. "I am not saying all of Clearwater clients were saints," Sandra continued, stirring sugar into coffee the waitress had poured. "And I am not saying your wife methods were legal or ethical across the board. But the narrative that became public, that this was just mercenary women scheming to take advantage of good men, that is incomplete. Some of these women had no other options. The systems that are supposed to protect people in bad marriages move slowly or do not move at all." Clearwater filled a gap. Marcus considered this. He had thought about those stories, the ones that came out during depositions and discovery, the abuse cases and financial control situations. They had troubled him even in the midst of his anger. "So what are you asking me?" he said finally. "I am not asking anything," Sandra replied. "I just thought you should know. Because one of my clients, Pauline, she wanted me to tell you thank you." Marcus blinked. "Thank you for what? For exposing the whole operation? For making it harder for women like her to get help? Thank you for going after your wife legally instead of violently." Sandra's voice was flat, matter of fact. "Pauline said when she saw the news story about the lawsuit, her first thought was relief that you had chosen courts and lawyers instead of what her own husband would have done, which is show up with a tire iron. She said it reminded her that some men still believe in systems, even broken ones. It gave her courage to file her own case properly. The waitress came and Marcus ordered eggs he did not want, just to buy time to think. When she left, he said, "I do not know what to do with that." "You do not have to do anything with it," Sandra said. "I just thought you would want the full picture. Denise made choices that hurt you badly. She also made choices that probably saved a few lives. Both things are true." They talked for another 20 minutes. Sandra did not try to absolve Denise or demonize Marcus, did not offer easy moral frameworks. She just laid out complexity the way a good lawyer does, acknowledged competing truths, left him to sort through them. When they parted in the parking lot, she shook his hand and said, "For what it is worth, I think you did what you needed to do. I also think it cost more than money." Driving back to Portland, Marcus called Dr. Reyes and asked for an emergency session. She fit him in that evening. Late appointment in her office that overlooked Deering Oaks Park, and he told her about the meeting with Sandra, about Pauline's message, about the way his certainty had developed fissures. Dr. Reyes listened in her careful way, hands folded in her lap, and when he finished, she asked him what he thought justice looked like now. "I do not know," Marcus admitted. "I thought it looked like accountability, restitution, consequences, and maybe it did. But now I am wondering if I just added more damage to an already damaged situation." "Can both be true?" Dr. Reyes asked. Marcus sat with that. Outside the window, early autumn light slanted through oak trees, and he watched a couple walk their dog along the park path, ordinary and easy, the kind of mundane happiness he used to take for granted. Yeah, he said eventually. I think both can be true. I think I was right to pursue what I pursued, and I think it also hurt people who did not deserve more hurt. I think Denise built something unethical that also did genuine good for some people. I think she betrayed me and also maybe saved lives I will never know about. It is all true simultaneously, and I do not know how to hold all of it. Maybe you do not have to hold all of it, Dr. Reyes suggested. Maybe you just acknowledge it exists and decide what you do next based on who you want to be rather than what was done to you. That night, Marcus wrote an email he did not send, drafted it to Denise, tried to articulate something about Sandra's visit and Pauline's message, and his own confusion about whether he had been righteous or just wounded. He wrote 4 versions, deleted 3, saved one in his drafts folder. A week later, he deleted that one too. Some conversations did not need to happen. Some complexity just had to be lived with. Leo graduated high school that spring, decided to defer college for a year, and work full-time at the marine supply store, save money and figure out what he actually wanted. He had grown taller than Marcus, shoulders broadening from stocking heavy equipment. And sometimes Marcus looked at his son and saw a man he respected, someone who had watched his parents' marriage detonate and come out the other side with surprising resilience. They did not talk about Denise much. Leo saw her every other weekend, kept those relationships separate, and Marcus did not press. One Saturday morning, Leo asked him if he was angry all the time, and Marcus said no, mostly just tired, and Leo nodded like that made sense. Rebecca moved in that summer, not into Marcus' apartment, but into her own place, 2 buildings over, close enough to share meals and morning coffee, but separate enough to maintain independence. They had talked about it carefully, both of them wary of repeating old patterns, and decided proximity without cohabitation felt right. Some evenings they cooked together in her kitchen, windows open to harbor breeze, and Rebecca told him about her ex-husband, who had been a functional alcoholic and expert liar. And Marcus told her about the Sunday crosswords and what it felt like to discover the refinance money was gone, and they traded damage reports like people comparing scars after battle. It was not romantic in a conventional sense, but it was honest, and honesty turned out to be its own kind of intimacy. In October, Marcus received a LinkedIn message from a woman named Teresa, who identified herself as one of Clearwater former clients. She had found him through the news articles, wanted to say her piece. Marcus almost did not respond, but curiosity won. They agreed to meet at a coffee shop in Biddeford, neutral territory. Teresa was in her 50s, worked as a dental hygienist, wore practical shoes and a wedding ring she twisted while she talked. I am still married, she said after preliminary introductions. Clearwater helped me set up a separate account 4 years ago, just in case. I have never used it. My husband does not know it exists, and I feel guilty about it every single day. So why keep it? Marcus asked. Because I watched my mother stay in a marriage that killed her slowly, year by year, because she had no money and no options. Because my husband is a good man, but people change, situations change, and I promised myself I would never be trapped the way she was. Teresa looked at him directly. What Denise did to you was wrong. Using your money without permission, planning an exit without communication, that is betrayal, clear and simple. But the service itself, the idea that women should have resources and escape plans, I do not think that is wrong. I think it is just realistic. Marcus had heard versions of this before, the feminist autonomy argument, but coming from Teresa, it landed differently. She was not political or ideological, just pragmatic, a woman who had seen what vulnerability looked like and decided to protect herself. He asked her why she had wanted to meet with him. Because I saw what happened to Denise and Joanne, how it all collapsed, and I felt guilty, Teresa said. I benefited from their service and they paid the price. I wanted to tell someone that, I guess. Tell you specifically. Your wife hurt you, but she also helped people, and I am one of them. And I am sorry you got caught in the middle of that. They talked for an hour. Marcus told her about the refinance, the depositions, the moment he had realized his marriage was a fiction. Teresa listened and did not try to minimize his experience or defend Denise's methods. When they parted, she said, I hope you find peace with it. whatever that looks like for you. Driving home, Marcus thought about peace, what it meant, whether it was achievable or just a word people used for acceptance of ongoing ambiguity. He had wanted clarity, wanted clean lines between right and wrong, perpetrator and victim. But Sandra and Teresa, and even Dr. Reyes, kept suggesting that real life did not offer those clean lines. That morality was a landscape of overlapping territories where someone could be both betrayer and helper, where justified anger and legitimate need could coexist and contradict each other. That night, he finally responded to Denise's 8-month-old email. Kept it brief, I heard from some of your former clients. I understand better now what you were trying to do, even if I still think how you did it was wrong. I do not forgive you for the lying and the use of our money without consent, but I acknowledge it is more complicated than I wanted it to be. I hope you are doing okay, she wrote back 2 days later. Thank you for that. I know I hurt you badly, and I am sorry for the parts that were about selfishness rather than survival. I have been working with a therapist on understanding the difference. Joanne and I shut down Clearwater permanently last year, not just because of legal pressure, but because we realized we had crossed lines we should not have. Some of the women we helped really needed help. Others probably did not, and we took their money anyway because it was profitable. I am trying to figure out how to live with that. I hope Leo is good. Tell him I love him. Marcus showed Leo the email. His son read it on Marcus' phone. Standing in the kitchen of the apartment, surrounded by the modest furniture and thrift store dishes that constituted their reconfigured life, and then handed the phone back without comment. After a minute, he said, "Do you think people can be good and bad at the same time?" "Yeah," Marcus said. "I think that is most people, actually." "Then I think Mom is most people," Leo said. "She did a shitty thing to you. She also probably helped some people who needed it. Both are true. We do not have to pick one." It was the most insightful thing Marcus had heard in 2 years of therapy, delivered casually by his 18-year-old son in a kitchen that smelled like reheated pizza. He felt a swell of something close to pride, that despite everything, Leo had emerged with nuance intact, capable of holding contradiction without collapsing into cynicism. Winter came again, second winter in the apartment, and Marcus found himself less angry than he had been. Not happy exactly, not healed in any complete sense, but functional in a way that felt sustainable. He worked his union contracts, spent evenings with Rebecca, helped Leo apply to community colleges with maritime programs, went to therapy every other week, cooked simple meals and kept his space clean, and paid his bills on time. Small dignities that added up to a life. Simone came home for Thanksgiving, spent 3 days in Portland, splitting time between Marcus' apartment and Denise's new place across town, a garden-level studio Denise shared with a roommate to make rent. Simone was older somehow. Sophomore year of college had added a gravity Marcus recognized from his own early 20s. The weight of realizing your parents are flawed humans rather than fixed archetypes. She asked him direct questions over coffee at the kitchen table. Did he hate her mother? Was he lonely? Did he think they would ever speak civilly? Marcus answered honestly. No, he did not hate Denise, but he did not trust her and probably never would. Yes, he was lonely sometimes, but less than he had expected, and loneliness turned out to be manageable when you stop fighting it. As for civility, they were managing emails about Leo needs and logistics, which was a kind of communication, even if it was not warmth. Do you wish you had done anything differently? Simone asked. With the lawsuit, I mean, going after her so hard. Marcus had been waiting for this question. I do not know, he said. I think I needed to pursue accountability, or I would have just been a victim forever, stuck in resentment. But yeah, I wonder sometimes if there was a way to do it that caused less collateral damage. I do not have an answer. Simone nodded slowly. I think you were both right and both wrong, she said, which is confusing but also maybe just reality. That is the most mature thing I have heard in a long time, Marcus told her, and meant it. After Simone left, Rebecca came over and they sat on the couch watching snow fall past the window, neither of them talking much. And Marcus felt something he had not felt in years. Contentment without conditions. Not happiness dependent on circumstances aligning perfectly. not satisfaction contingent on someone else's behavior, just a baseline okayness with where he was and who he was with. It was not the sweeping romance he had had with Denise in those early years, was not the certainty of thinking you had found your forever person. It was something quieter and maybe more durable. Two damaged people building something small and honest together, without illusions. In December, Patricia Owens called. She had been contacted by a journalist writing a long-form piece about informal financial networks women create to escape marriages. Wanted to interview Marcus for context. He said no immediately, had no interest in relitigating publicly, but Patricia pushed back gently. "The article is going to be written with or without you," she said. "If you participate, you get to add complexity to the narrative. Right now, the story is either heroic women helping each other or scheming wives defrauding husbands. You could offer a third option." Marcus thought about it for a week, finally agreed to a phone interview, talked to the journalist for 90 minutes, tried to articulate the both-and nature of what had happened. The article ran in February in a regional magazine, 6,000 words titled "The Gray Market of Divorce: How Underground Financial Networks Help and Hurt." Marcus appeared in the second half, his experience presented alongside Pauline and Carmen and two other women's stories. The journalist had done her job well, refused easy moralism, showed the genuine needs some women had for services like Clearwater, while also documenting the ethical breaches and outright fraud in other cases. Denise was quoted briefly, said she stood by the principle of financial autonomy for women even as she acknowledged her methods had sometimes been legally and ethically questionable. Joanne declined to comment. The article ended with a law professor discussing the gap between ideal divorce law and actual divorce reality, how the system's slowness and expense created markets for workarounds, some legitimate and some not. Marcus read it 3 times, felt exposed but also relieved that the complexity had been captured, that it was not reduced to villain and victim dynamics. Rebecca read it too, said it seemed fair, asked him how he felt. "Like maybe I can stop defining myself by this now," he said. "Like it is a thing that happened rather than the thing I am." Spring came. Leo got accepted to a 2-year maritime technology program starting in fall. Rebecca's divorce was finalized. 30-year marriage officially ended with a settlement that left her financially stable and emotionally exhausted. She and Marcus celebrated quietly with takeout Chinese on her couch, toasted with beer to surviving their respective catastrophes, agreed that middle-aged dating after betrayal was deeply weird and also kind of beautiful in its lack of pretense. In May, Marcus ran into Joanne at the grocery store. They had avoided each other successfully for 2 years, but the store was small and there was no escape route. She looked older, grayer, worn down in a way that made Marcus feel strange sympathy despite everything. They stood in the cereal aisle with shopping carts between them like barricades. "I am sorry," Joanne said abruptly, "for what we did, for pulling you into it." "For," she gestured vaguely, "all of it." Marcus did not know what to say. Finally managed, "Are you doing okay?" "Not really, but I am working on it. Therapy, amends where I can make them." She looked at him directly. "Denise and I both convinced ourselves we were helping people, and we were, some people, but we also hurt people and we told ourselves the ends justified the means. They did not. I am trying to figure out how to live with that." They talked for 5 more minutes, strange stilted conversation between people who had been family once and were now just survivors of the same disaster. When they parted, Joanne said, "I hope you and Leo are good," and Marcus said, "I hope you find what you are looking for," and meant it more than he would have expected. That night he told Rebecca about the encounter. She asked him if it changed anything. "I do not think so," he said, "but maybe it closes something, or opens something. I am not sure which." Dr. Reyes, when he told her the following week, said that recovery was not linear, that it looped and doubled back, and sometimes you had to reprocess the same events from new angles. Marcus was tired of processing, wanted to just be done, but he also recognized that done was not a state you achieved so much as a choice you kept making. He could choose to be done with active anger, done with retribution, done with defining himself against Denise's betrayal. That did not mean forgetting or forgiving in some total way. just meant releasing the grip it had on his daily experience. Summer brought Leo's 19th birthday, cookout at Marcus' apartment building shared yard, Rebecca helping with burgers and Leo inviting friends from the marine supply store. Denise came for an hour, first time Marcus had seen her in person in over a year. They were carefully polite, kept conversations superficial, and focused on Leo, did not rehash anything. When she left, Marcus felt neither satisfaction nor resentment, just a kind of neutral recognition that they had been married once and now were not, had loved each other once and now did not. And that was just a fact like any other fact, heavy but no longer crushing. In August, Marcus got promoted to senior electrician on a major offshore wind project, pay bump and leadership role he had been working toward for years. He celebrated by taking Leo and Rebecca out to a nice dinner, the kind of restaurant with cloth napkins and wine lists, and over dessert, Leo asked him if he was happy. Marcus considered it. "I am okay," he said, "which is better than I thought I would be 2 years ago. So yeah, I guess that is a kind of happy." Rebecca reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Leo grinned and said, "That is good, Dad." "Okay, is good." On the drive home, Marcus thought about the forensic accountant cold coffee, the courthouse conference room, the moment Patricia had laid out the evidence, and he had realized his marriage was over. Thought about Pauline, thank you, and Teresa, secret account in Joanne Apology in the cereal aisle. Thought about Sandra, question, what does justice look like, and how he still did not have a clean answer. Justice had looked like legal accountability, restitution, consequences. It had also looked like collateral damage and women losing resources they needed, and a network of informal support collapsing under scrutiny. Both were true. Justice was messy and incomplete, and sometimes cost more than it returned. What Marcus had now was not justice exactly. It was just life continuing past the point of rupture, rebuilt with smaller expectations and harder boundaries and an honesty that felt more durable than whatever he had had before. He had loved Denise with his whole heart, and she had betrayed that love for reasons both selfish and sympathetic. And he had sought accountability through every legal means available, and none of it had restored what was lost, because restoration was never the point. The point was to survive, to refuse victimhood without becoming a perpetrator, to hold complexity without drowning in it, to keep building a life worth living even when the foundation was cracked. He still kept small reminders, not the coffee cup, he had thrown that away, but a photograph of the four of them at Acadia before everything fell apart, back when he thought he knew the story he was living. He looked at it sometimes and did not feel nostalgia or rage, just a quiet recognition that those people existed and made choices, and some of those choices hurt others, and here they all were on the other side, separately alive, separately healing, connected still by Leo and Simone, but no longer by the fiction of permanent partnership. Maybe that was the lesson if there was one. Betrayal does not end, it just becomes part of the landscape you navigate. You can fight it through courts and lawyers, can document and litigate and force restitution, and at the end you are still the person who was betrayed, still carrying that knowledge. But you are also the person who survived it, who chose accountability over revenge or passivity, who learned to distinguish between justice and vengeance even when the line was thin. You are the person who kept getting up and going to work and cooking dinner and helping your kid with homework and eventually opening yourself to new relationship, not because you forgot or forgave completely, but because staying frozen in the moment of betrayal would have been a different kind of death. Marcus Webb was not healed. He was functional. He was building something new from the rubble of what broke. He was learning to hold both and instead of either or, to acknowledge that Denise had hurt him deeply and also helped people who needed help, that his pursuit of justice had been both righteous and destructive, that their 16 years together had been real even though they had ended in lies. All of it was true simultaneously, and he did not have to resolve the contradiction, just had to live with it and keep choosing forward motion over paralysis. On a Friday evening in early fall, second anniversary of the day he had confronted Denise with the evidence, Marcus sat on his apartment balcony watching container ships navigate the harbor and thought about where he had been and where he was. The anger had faded to something manageable, present but not consuming. The loneliness had texture now, was not just absence, but a kind of space where he could breathe without accommodation or performance. He had Leo and Simone, had Rebecca in her careful measured way, had work that mattered, and friends from the union and Dr. Reyes every other Thursday. It was not the life he had imagined at 25 when he married Denise in the Unitarian church with his mother crying and everyone believing him forever. It was smaller and harder won and built on truth instead of hope, and that made it solid in ways the old life never was. He could not go back to innocence, the knowledge of betrayal was permanent, but he could go forward with clarity, with boundaries that protected without isolating, with enough scar tissue to be wary, but not enough to be bitter. The forensic accountant coffee had gone cold 2 years ago in a courthouse conference room, and Marcus Webb had carried that coldness with him for months. Let it confirm his worst beliefs about trust and marriage and human reliability. But coldness was not wisdom, and bitterness was not clarity. Wisdom, if he had found any, was knowing that people were complicated, that Denise could be both betrayer and helper, that his pursuit of accountability could be both necessary and harmful, that love could be real and still not be enough. He did not know if that counted as recovery or just survival, did not know if he would ever stop checking bank accounts twice or feeling a spike of adrenaline when someone's story shifted slightly. The betrayal had rewired him, and some of that wiring was permanent, but he also knew he could cook dinner and laugh at Leo jokes and hold Rebecca's hand and show up for his job and pay his bills and help Simone move into her new apartment next month. And those small dignities added up to a life that was his, built by his hands from materials he had chosen, honest all the way down, even if honesty meant acknowledging damage that would not fully heal. That seemed like enough, not triumph, not vindication, but enough. A foundation solid enough to stand on, to build from, to live with. And maybe that was the best outcome anyone got after betrayal and retribution, and the slow work of reconstruction, not the life you had imagined, just the life you had earned by refusing to let the worst thing that happened to you be the only thing that defined you. Marcus finished his beer, watched the sun set orange over the harbor, and went inside to start making dinner. Small, simple meal for one that would become two when Rebecca arrived. And in that ordinary domestic moment, he felt something close to peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose. And that was more than enough. It was everything, really. The quiet knowledge that you could survive the unsurvivable and come out the other side diminished but not destroyed, capable still of building something worth keeping even from the broken pieces of what you had lost.